John was such a drag, but that didn't matter, seeing as how at the end of the story he'll end up dying. Yep, you heard it. John Cave will die. Of course, he didn't know that. Why would he? Well, I guess you could make the argument for the opposite thanks to the fact that John wasn't the best man he could be, not in the sense that he was cruel or monstrous, but more along the lines that he was complicit. Complicit with things that ended up getting people who worked under him fired. So as he worked diligently in his back office at the Brookmore Mall, he didn't know of the fate that awaited him outside his place of work. He didn't want to be there. Who would? After the folks above him had a few replacements, John had to get rid of a few people. He was more than happy to do so, since there were a few people who worked under him that he was jumping at the chance to get rid of, which usually amounted to those who felt as if they didn't need to bow down to every whim John threw out. So after a few bitter goodbyes, all John needed to do was sort out the paperwork and he would be on his way. But for John, he saw the light at the end of the tunnel of his work, since he would have to fill the job position that had just opened up with someone who was more than desperate for work, and something that only John would be able to give them. As he filled out the last paper, he reached up a hand and rubbed at his now tired eyes. However, the strain on his pupils was slightly dulled thanks to the reality that he could finally go home. But of course, he wouldn't be going home. The farthest he would ever get in his final moments would be to the edge of the parking lot before he passed from one realm to the other, with some debating which way he went. By the time he left his office and closed the door behind him, the lights throughout the mall were already mostly turned off, with the only signs of life remaining being the last few security guards doing their rounds around the place. Although, after recent events, not a lot of guards were looking fondly at him. Specifically, John managed to convince one of the older guards to quit so that John could have his parking spot. He did this by telling him that he should put all of his eggs into one basket in terms of investing. But after that fell through, the guy ended up taking his own life. But why should John care? His friends and coworkers should have been the ones to study the signs and step in. As he steadily made his way through the mall, an upbeat 90s song was playing as he walked. He couldn't help but feel glad that he was leaving the place that had kept him for so long. But he wouldn't have to worry about that since he wouldn't be returning the next day or the next, or for as long as it was still open. The cold and chilled night air greeted him with a gust of cold wind against his bitter-looking face as he opened the doors to the place he considered a prison. He made sure to be quite careful as he descended down the ice-covered stairs. He made sure to have steady footing as he went from one foot to the other. As he walked down the stairs, he hoped that he wouldn't fall and break his neck, which he wouldn't have any need to worry about, seeing as how his fate had him sitting in his car. The side of his car was somehow even colder as he sat inside and turned on the heater. After letting out a deep breath, he quickly made sure that he was perfectly set and safe for his journey back home, where his less than happy marriage and two kids awaited him. Not that it mattered anyway. He always made sure his wife fell in line, whether it be cooking or cleaning around the house. And he suspected for a while now that the two blood-sucking brats that lived with him weren't actually his, no matter how many blood tests were shown to him. But as he got himself settled in his car, he considered ways to get rid of both of them, since they were giving him looks that made him feel less than safe in his own home. So as he put his car in drive and began to pull away from the mall, he could already feel himself wrapped up in his own bed as his wife slept in the guest bedroom, which ended up being another one of his own choices involving their marriage. He made sure to be very careful as he pulled up to the edge of the parking lot, coming right on onto the main road. But as he checked the road, he suddenly turned at the sound of someone walking towards his car. John quickly watches as a guy wrapped up in winter gear approached his car. When it looked like the guy was reaching for something in his pocket and was nearing John's passenger side window, the guy suddenly turned and walked towards the mall as John realized that it was most likely some homeless guy looking for somewhere to get warm. At the realization that he was now safe, John lets out a sigh of relief as he happily leans back into his seat and lets out a low chuckle before saying under his breath, "Guess I'm getting paranoid." And while he thought he was safe, his brief pause on the side of the road ended up being just enough time for the drunk driver to accidentally swerve off the side of the road and collide into John's truck, killing John in the process.